Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bon Voyage Besties with your hosts, Rosa and Rachel, the show where travel, friendship, and empowerment take flight. Rachel won't be joining us tonight as she's coaching an epic soccer game, but I'm super excited to have a true jet setting inspiration back on the show. Jen Ruiz. Jen is a lawyer turned full time travel blogger, best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and a TEDx speaker. She's been named a top Latina travel expert by The Point Guys and Me Too, and she's the solo female traveler behind the wildly popular platform Jen on a Jet Plane. In this episode, Jen is going to be sharing what it's really like to work as a professional travel journalist, plus how you can use your writing skills to land stories in world-class magazines and get paid to see the world. So welcome back, Jen, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosa. I'm happy to be here.
We're so excited. So we'll just jump right in. Would you like to tell our listeners how you first got started as a travel writer? Was this something that you planned or you just kind of stumbled into it?
So my first step was actually starting a blog. And this was back maybe before social media really took off, before YouTube was this big thing, and blogging was still new to the world. People were finding this way to have this creative outlet for their writing. And I thought, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Let me start a blog. And then in order to get traffic and recognition and links to my blog, I started freelance writing. So I started submitting my ideas to different bigger outlets, hoping that if I was featured in these other outlets, like I would be writing for Thought Catalog or Elite Daily that I started contributing to regularly, that if I did this, then I would get traffic to my blog and it would help grow my blog. So ultimately, when I started with Elite Daily, that was the first time that I was actually writing more consistently for any one outlet because they had trending news that they would send out bulletins every single day to their contributors. They'd say, these are the headlines that we're looking to cover. And if you could write an article and have it sent in within, 3 to 4 hours that same day, there was a high chance that it would get published. And Elite Daily had a lot of viewers. So I would be sending in articles almost daily. And I had, 50 articles plus articles published with them. And that was my first foray into freelance writing.
That's awesome. And I like what you said about starting off with the blog. I know when I first started getting into content creation, that's actually what I did. My daughter was really into computers and web design at the time. And I would already post things like on social media, but mostly just for like my friends and family. And then she was like, why don't we just start a blog together? And I was like, sure, why not? I always personally enjoy writing, but I never consider myself a writer. So the idea of having a blog was something completely out of my comfort zone and out of my realm, but it was so much fun. And I think it's great too, because you already have an established portfolio. So when you are pitching to publications, you already have something to show as far as maybe like your writing style, other things that you can kind of pitch to the editors as well.
Yes, I think a blog is still important even today and I think it always will be, especially as we move towards a digital first businesses, lifestyle, things of the sort. People look to see your presence online before they really trust you, before they buy from you, before they're, supporting you. And yes, your socials are one aspect of that, but they really vary. It depends on which social media, is the hot platform of the time, whereas your website is your home online. You control it, you design it, you get to decide what information is showcased on there. And so I really recommend everybody to have one. And a blog, the articles aspect of your website is just so that you get seen, so that you're sharing relevant information and helping to establish yourself as an expert in whatever topic your blog is about. But ultimately, the point of the website is to have a place to showcase yourself and your business online.
That's great. And I know we talked about initially when you first joined us in our episode of Bon Voyage Besties, we kind of talked a little bit about your career. So you were a lawyer, you decided to do this amazing 12 trips in 12 months, and that kind of kickstarted things for you. But was it during that time that you said, all right, this is what I want to be doing. I want to be doing this for a living. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I want to get into travel writing and social media. Was it a specific destination or maybe a story that made you think this is it? This is what I want to be doing for a living?
It's honestly still been evolving. morphing because so many things about the profession have changed. And so the same way that I thought initially that I was going to be, really heavy into the blog and that was going to be my main effort and that I was going to monetize the blog with display ads. And I'm part of Mediavine and it's been a great program for me, but my focus shifted away from the blog as social media became more prevalent, as video first messaging became more prevalent. And so I don't know really what the next couple of years are going to hold with AI and so many different things shifting. And so for me, it's always been the core thread of storytelling. So whether that is through an article, through a video, through in person public speaking, through podcasts, the same skill set and the same thing that I'm trying to do, hopefully over whatever future platform comes as well, is tell a story and keep people engaged. And that was the same thing I did as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer, when you're talking to a jury. You're telling them the story about how this case happened, and hopefully they'll find your story more compelling than the other side. So it's always been that core skill set of storytelling and then figuring out what's the best way today to get my message out to as many people as possible.
I love that. And like you said, it's something that it's constantly evolving. Now with AI, I still feel like it's still a strong presence to be able to read. I know for myself, whenever I do research, I love reading other blogs and just getting like that personal connection, that personal insight from a true human being of going to a destination, going to a location. And you can tell when something is written by AI or you're getting something just from ChatGPT versus when it's an actual human that's writing a piece. So I know for myself personally, blogs are still a very essential part of my research when I am traveling to a new destination.
And they're going to be needed to continue to feed the AI model, right? The computer itself can't go out and scout that new restaurant that's opening. Like somebody has to actually input something into the digital world for AI to be able to scrape that. And we're seeing now blogs be attributed because we are seeing ChatGPT rise in terms of how people are planning their trips, right? So originally it was Google search results. Then it was they would be searching TikTok videos. And now people are using ChatGPT to plan their itineraries. So we're seeing that development, but we're also seeing ChatGPT now attribute where they're pulling that information from, linking directly back to blogs. So it doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic. So I think that it has really evolved and it's a matter of where is the attention now today and how can you use that to best get your message across.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know for myself, like I said, when I first started doing my blog, even though I enjoy writing, I enjoyed reading and literature and English and all of that great stuff. It was actually one of my favorite subjects in school, but I never considered myself to be a writer. So I know I actually subscribed to your Substack, and you had posted that National Geographic they were looking for pitches. And I said to myself, like, why not? I had a story in mind. Mind you, I have done prior writing pieces for other publications, but these were publications that have personally reached out to me. They already had a story in mind that they thought I would be a good fit for. So it was kind of easy for me to develop those stories. But I saw your email and I was like, I have this idea. I'm going to pitch it. And I sent the pitch out to the editor. And I swear, like 5 minutes later, I'm in my outbox about to hit like unsend because I'm like, what am I doing? This is my first time sending a pitch and I'm sending it to National Geographic. Like, who do I even think I am? And long story short, a few days later, I get the email. The editor loved my idea. And fast forward to 6 months afterwards, I landed my very first publication that I personally pitched and with National Geographic. So I remember I didn't tell one single soul other than Michael and Samantha. And I was like, guys, like, I don't know if this is going to happen. They might just pull the story last minute because they're going to hate it. And it turned out beautiful. So first of all, thank you, because if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't even have known about this opportunity. But what would you say for someone like they are beginning, right? They're kind of similar situation from where I was. They're not necessarily sure where they can find information as far as who to pitch to, what kind of stories to pitch to. So where would you say would be kind of like a good starting point for finding these contacts and finding these publications and opportunities?
Absolutely. Well, first, congratulations. That's incredible. National Geographic is a dream byline for so many people. And I'm just so glad that you pressed send on your idea. That's really the hardest part for people is believing in themselves that they have an idea worth sharing and then continuing to pitch it if they get rejections or if they don't hear back. Which happens a lot in the writing world and could have absolutely nothing to do with the merit of your idea, but rather the publication is, covering the competitor or has a sponsored post that's in conflict with what you're writing or whatever the case may be. It could have something completely unrelated to whether or not your idea is actually good. But when you send something out and you're waiting to hear back and you're so nervous and then you don't hear back or it's a no, you could be like, I knew it, I'm not going to try again. And so, really, congratulations. I think this is just a sign that you're on the right path and should be pitching more. But for anybody who doesn't get that instant success and that instant big byline, just know that that's totally normal. And the important thing is to make sure that you are pitching something of value. So you have multiple ways that you can start pitching. So you can cold pitch, which is when you send an email to editors that are generally commissioning for that outlet. And you can usually find this information in what's called pitching guidelines. These are put together by the publication. They, list everything that they're looking for, their different columns, their word counts, their pay rates, and who to contact. And these people are open for pitches year round. So you come up with your ideas and you can send them there. They're generally commissioning. And then you also have what's called calls for pitches. And that's where editors know that they have an article that needs to be written and they're looking for the person to write that article. It could be that they already have the article in mind. Could be they're looking for pitches on a particular topic or destination. But either way, it's a little bit easier and it's a little bit of a way in for certain outlets that maybe aren't open to pitches year round. If they have a specific call for pitches, then you can get your foot in the door there. And then the last way would be the way that you mentioned, where an editor's already worked with you before. They already know that you're a subject matter expert and they reach out to you with a potential assignment directly, which usually happens again when you have some sort of expertise that's been established or a reputation that precedes you, so that editors know to reach out to you as the go-to person on New Jersey or the go-to person on traveling with a friend or, whatever the case may be. And so I think that the more that you establish yourself, the easier that is. But ultimately, you will need a few starter bylines to give you a good portfolio so that you can start pitching yourself and including writing samples as well.
And you bring up a good point as far as making sure that when you are pitching, that it is something of value. I know I did do a little bit of research prior to sending that pitch to the editor for National Geographic. I had a very specific destination in mind that I wanted to write about, and that was Nauflio, Greece. I went on their website, their travel website portion, and I did a quick little search, and like one article came up, and it was like literally 4 sentences, and it was published, I think in like 2023 or 2022. So it was a pretty older article. So I was like, all right, there's nothing else there. I went to a couple of other competitor sites. I didn't really see anything specifically about this location. So I felt confident enough. I mean, I still felt like I was reaching for the stars, but I felt confident enough in my pitch that I was pitching something that was valuable, that was, somewhat unique for the publication. So I think it's important to make sure that when you are sending a pitch, that you are crafting something that it's going to be, eye-opening, whether it's for the readers or for the audience that you're trying to write for. So definitely keeping that in mind. But are there other things that somebody needs to kind of put together when sending these cold pitches out to editors or publications?
Certainly. To your point, you can absolutely come up with something unique and undeniable that they're going to want to add to their travel publication, especially if it's not heavily covered. When you're pitching something like Paris, your idea has to be really new, really novel, to have something that hasn't already been said about Paris. Whereas, like you said, this Greek island, one of hundreds of Greek islands, hasn't been covered extensively. Basically, any information that you're offering here is new and valuable to that outlet. You have to think of this outlet also as a travel business, and they're publishing travel articles, and they want to have a comprehensive range of coverage. So for you, I think it's important to either come up with something as a writer and somebody who's pitching, to either come up with something completely unique, novel, timely. This is where timeliness is really important, because maybe it's the same topic. Maybe we're talking about Paris, but now we're talking about a particular anniversary, a museum opening, something seasonal that's happening there. These timely things make it a lot rarer. And that helps you to be able to stand out. But alternatively, you don't have to be finding like the most unique things in the world to pitch a travel article. And I think that also can be a big impediment for a lot of people, where they think, I haven't gone anywhere super fascinating. I haven't been to this amazing Greek island like Rosa has, and so I don't have anything to write about for National Geographic. However, you are an expert of where you live. You're an expert in where you grew up. You're an expert in where you are locally, and wherever you are currently is a destination for somebody. It may not feel like a vacation destination to you, but people are interested in content from your local area, and you are already a local expert. So you already have on the ground access. You already have all of these things that you can sell in your pitch. So I think that that's something to keep in mind mind. If you're somebody thinking, wow, I'm not going to find a super rare, unique, worldly story, you could have that story waiting for you in your backyard. Which brings me to your second part of your question, which is what to include in a pitch. And there you definitely want to be mentioning those things, right? Your subject matter expertise, your access, any interviews, any people that you can talk to, any photo or video assets that you have, especially now that a lot of outlets are trying to cover things from a multimedia perspective. So it's not just the story, but it's the interlinked TikTok video and, the photos that they're posting, things like that. So, but that's at the very end of your post, actually. So you're not going to start your post with or your pitch with, not your post, your pitch. You're not going to start it with, hey, I'm so and so, and I'm the foremost expert on Minneapolis, because that's not relevant yet until they know if they even are interested in your article. So the very first thing that you're leading with when you're cold pitching is the article. Editors are busy and they just want to know, what is your idea? Is your idea even worth me learning anything about you? Or is this a horrible, really standard 5 things to do in Minneapolis that everybody knows about and Google AI gives you in the first generated result? That's nothing new and that's nothing compelling. And why would they pay you to write that? And so if your idea needs to be the very first thing you lead with, and it needs to be strong, it needs to have a title that is titled in the way that their outlet titles things, because the title that you would have for the Smithsonian or National Geographic is totally different than the title that you would have for Business Insider, Huffington Post, or, Remezcla, or any of these other outlets. So you have to see, how do they do their titles? You have to make your title something that they could see and they could be like, oh, this could go on the homepage tomorrow, right? This doesn't need any edits at all. I could print this as is. This was 100% for us. Like, this person gets our magazine, gets our readership, gets how we word things, gets the type of wording that we use, like the phrasing that we use, who we're speaking to. That's all going to vary. You might be speaking, if you're writing for a scientific magazine, you might be speaking to like scholars in their 50s or up. If you're writing for a young Gen Z outlet, you're speaking to like, with different lingo. So you have to have that really clear and make it so that it fits and can be printed right away from your email. Then you keep in just your title. And I like to sometimes give more than one title, because maybe the first one they're not super thrilled by, but the second one they really like. So I like to give them title alternatives so they can see how this fits into their publication. And then you summarize your article idea in 3 to 4 sentences. Again, nothing crazy, but the who, what, where, when, and why of your pitching. Making sure you're covering all of that for that article. And then once you have your subject line, your 3 to 4 sentences, now you can go into who you are and why you're the right person to write this article. Keeping it super brief. Again, they don't want a 5-paragraph bio on you. They want 2 sentences. Like, summarize, I live here. I know this place because I am a local. I know this because I went and I have in-depth access and interviews that I talk to the people and all that stuff. Whatever it is, that's the most important thing you want to highlight about your experience and why you're the person to write it, in 2 sentences at the very end. And that's it. That's your pitch.
I agreed. I feel like I know my attention span sometimes can be very limited when I get pitches and emails from brands that want to work with me. And right away, if they don't grab my attention with like the first 2 lines, I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to read this later. But when I get an email from a brand and like the first like couple of lines just kind of like hit me, I am going to be reading that email immediately because they caught my attention. So I'm sure for editors that they're getting hundreds of emails on a daily basis and constantly getting pitched, they want something that's going to stand out. And I always say, when I send an email out, whether it's to a brand or to a publication, when I read it, I want to be excited. Like, am I excited to read this article? Because if I'm not excited, most likely the person that I'm sending it to might not find it exciting either. So making sure that it kind of stands out. And like you said, at the end, you show that you are credible. You can talk about yourself and why you're the right person, but you definitely want to make sure that the initial part of the email, it kind of stands out and speaks specifically to that publication, because that's a good point as well. You're not going to send the pitch to National Geographic that you're going to send to Business Insider. Maybe it could be similar story, but you're going to be using different references or different point of views as well.
Absolutely.
And we all know that travel writing, it can come with some glamorous perks, right? You get to travel the world, have these amazing experiences, get paid to write, all of these great opportunities. But would you say there's some misconceptions when it comes to being a travel writer?
There are. So first, I think a lot of people think that a travel writer is just a staff role. So I think the first thing is that it could be a freelance role. It doesn't have to be something that you quit your job to do. I know a lot of people that have started it. Like you said, you publish an article with National Geographic and you still have other things that you're doing, right? You're not a full-time employee for National Geographic. I think that that's something that deters people from trying, thinking that there's no space for them, but there is. People want these voices. And now more than ever, unfortunately, as we're seeing big shifts in media and big layoffs where staff roles are tenuous, you don't really know if they're going to stick around or if they're going to be eliminated. So it's the media landscape is constantly changing. And it could be that an editor that you've worked with now is out of work. And so it's a volatile landscape. So because of that, you just have to kind of learn how to surf it. So first, as a freelancer, you're already in a better position because you're not relying on this fully. And I don't recommend relying on one-off articles fully for your income. I think you can make a full-time income as a freelance writer, but I think you have to have varied income streams. I think if you're going to be doing freelance writing for a major media outlet, you need to have somebody that has you on as a column, maybe doing blog posts for a smaller client or somebody that's more regular that's keeping you anchored. You can make income doing a paid newsletter like I've done with my Substack. And like a lot of people are doing now, independent journalists that are moving to this more reader funded models. And you can also write books, guidebooks. I know people that have written entire guidebook series. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do. And the publishing barrier to entry now is lower than ever with Amazon, with self-publishing, with these books being indistinguishable from traditionally published books and having the same distribution. So there's a lot of ways that you can make money as a writer, but it's not going to be as easy as you think. You're definitely not going to be very rare. You get paid like, I think I was watching Sex in the City and there was one point where Carrie was getting paid like $4 a word for Vogue. So those assignments are really hard to find. And then as maybe that was the case for a big prestigious print magazine like Vogue. But now, as I mentioned, things are moving digital first, which means before to get that $4 a word article, it would be an article you're working on for months, maybe a year before it's published in print. And that's that one article that you have in that magazine. And that magazine has room for 12 articles total, right? Now you have a digital platform. They're publishing dozens of articles every single day. So the pay has significantly decreased. And what you get paid for digital is significantly less than what you would get paid for print. And so you could be having digital articles, I find exploitative, anything under like $100 for 1,000 words. Like if we're talking like $15 for 1,000, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's exploitative. So, but I think when you're starting out, like 10 cents a word is kind of a good beginner point. I think 50 cents a word tends to be on average for more experienced digital writers. And then from there, $1 a word is possible for the more legacy outlets, but it's becoming rarer and rarer. So the pay is not what you think it is. It's tough to sustain it as a full-time job if you're just doing one-off assignments, and you do need to diversify, but you do have more ways to monetize the skill of writing than you might think.
Yeah, that's very true because I always would think when I was younger, I would think journalists and travel writers, I'm like, oh, wow, they get to travel to these destinations. I'm sure they're making like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And like you said, sometimes you read these pitches and they're like, okay, we'll give you 25 cents a word. And you're just like, all right, so I'm going to make like 500 bucks on this article. So like you said, it's from an outsider perspective. It looks like it's easy, but it's not. It's a lot of hard work going into it, pitching. But if it is something that you love, it definitely pays off. But you just have to put the time and the effort into it, and it definitely will pay off. Another great thing with the travel writing, I know some publications, they're not opposed when, let's say, freelance writers are publishing articles based on press trips. Obviously, making sure that you are disclosing that when you're sending the pitches is very important. So you want to make sure that, you're being honest about any press trips that you're taking if you're providing that type of coverage. So like, how do you balance being present on a trip while having to take notes, photos, and collecting material for a story?
It's work. I think a lot of people expect it to be a vacation, and that's what I don't do trips that are unpaid at this point. And earned media, usually travel writing, it's an unpaid trip where you go and you're hosted, and then you are paid by the publication after for the articles that you write for that publication. At this point, I only go on trips that I'm paid as a travel influencer because I've just had my own things over the years where I've seen things pan out. First, when you're going on earned media trips, they're usually group trips. So that means you have 14 to 16-hour days of an itinerary that's tailored for everyone, not necessarily tailored for you. And so you have to be able to keep up with that itinerary and show up and take all of the content. And then on top of that, I've had issues with placing articles. So a lot of people now are asking for guaranteed placement of articles. Assign it. You don't even know yet. You haven't been, you don't have the information. You can't really put together an angle. You're basing all of this off of press release. And again, it depends off of the outlet because some outlets do write things just off of press releases and never send anybody on the ground. But if you're somebody that's, like you said, a travel writer and you value that firsthand experience, you kind of have to go first before you see what you're going to pitch. So it becomes difficult to have a confirmed assignment. And then if you go and you don't land an assignment when you come back, it can also be difficult because now you have a PR firm that's looking at you for results. When that was the case, and I realized, like, I went to Qatar and it took me like 2 years to place a story after my trip with Qatar. But I wanted, because it was around the World Cup, there's a lot of issues, and there was just people didn't want to really touch the stories ultimately. And I ended up providing coverage on my own site and channels. I was able to get them over 400,000 views, things like that. But it's something where I can give you something that you can now go back to your, your boss, whoever it is that's tracking the metrics for this campaign, and this wasn't a complete wash. So that became really difficult for me as a writer, not having that ability to guarantee coverage. And if you're someone that has, a more regular place that you're writing for or something like that, and you can always write on your blog, but I found that I felt more comfortable saying, I can absolutely guarantee you these deliverables on this timeline, and I'm getting paid for my time there. But that this is 10 years into my career at this point. So when I was starting, I was absolutely taking any press trip that was available because they're wonderful experiences where you get to see behind the scenes, get hosted by the destination, have everything completely covered, and have experiences you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise, access to interviews you wouldn't have otherwise. Like, it's just a wonderful way to get materials for your stories. But they can be draining. The trips are draining.
Oh yeah, I can definitely vouch for that. That's why I always try to balance things. Similar to you, Jen. Like, so I work full time. So for me, same thing. If I am gonna go on a press trip in particular, it has to be a paid opportunity because for me to take time off from work to do work, it doesn't make realistic sense. Now, granted, sometimes I'll do like hostess stays if it's something like local right here in New Jersey or maybe like in New York. But if I have to travel somewhere, unless it's a paid opportunity, because it is work. I know there's times that I've gone on press trip, and like you said, you are creating content around the clock, 10, 12 hours. You come back home and you're exhausted, and then I have to go back to work. I'm just like, no, realistically, that doesn't work for me. But like you said, it is a great opportunity because you get to go to destinations, you get to see some behind the scenes and have like exclusive access to things. So it is a great way for you to kind of get experience or get to know a destination. And it also gives you something to write about, whether it's for your own personal blog or eventually be able to use that for some type of publication.
Absolutely. And it's just a matter while you're there of, depending on who you are and if you have a team with you, if you're a couple that's creating content, I'm a solo creator. So it's really trying to get as much as possible. So you're trying to get notes when you're talking to somebody and you're interviewing them. So you can get quotes and you can, use them later, get their contact information. You're trying to get videos of things while it's happening. It's part of the reason why I don't really have a YouTube is because it's really hard for me. It's already happened. I can't capture it again now. Landscape, I already have it or I already have it vertical. And so you kind of just have to constantly capture everything because you never know what content you're going to need. And I have gotten campaigns and be paid for content I've taken in the past. So it is important to keep that. That's why I have 50,000 images and videos on my phone because it's a possible future campaign. So it is a lot to capture and to kind of multitask across writing and content creation. That is the pro of being on assignment as a freelance writer. If you're just on that trip as an earned media person and nobody is paying you, I maybe wouldn't go crazy above and beyond to be taking social footage and videos. Like, you really should just be taking notes and experiencing it. And that is the good part of being a freelance writer. Like, you don't have to be on camera. You don't have to make any videos with yourself. Like, you're just telling the story of the people that you meet.
That's a good point. And kind of touching back on what you said earlier, let's say when you are covering something or pitching to a article about a destination that's already talked about. So let's say, like you said, you're already talking about Paris. If you Google Paris, you're going to find, thousands of articles everywhere. So how do you keep writing fresh when covering places that have been written about countless times?
The timely aspect. So as I mentioned, so is there a new thing that has opened? Is there an anniversary of a really old thing that they're celebrating in a specific way? Is there this thing that everybody knows about that's now being seen in a new light? Like I had mentioned, like has the river now been cleaned and now people are swimming in it for the first time in 150 years? That's a great new spin on something that's super old in the city. Is there something seasonal? Is there a Christmas roundup of the best Christmas markets? Or maybe lavender fields in July that you can go and see within driving distance of Paris, things like that. That those are seasonal things that people are looking for in these places. Is there something with a new artist or a local business that you can profile, that you can, really shine a light on a person within the city? These are all ways that you can take that one city and make it new.
I love that because, like you said, everyone has a different perspective. So we all have our own unique voice, our own unique perspective. So even if we go visit the same destination, we can definitely come back with a completely different experience. So definitely, just because it is a destination that's widely spoken about, it shouldn't deter you from pitching it as long as you have a unique angle to do that. From my personal experience, it's great when I subscribe to outlets like yours, so be your Substack, because for me, one of the hardest part about pitching is finding the contact because I work full time. So the limited time that I have for me to do research, so being able to have things easily accessible. So like for instance, when I get emails from you, certain publications, I'm like, oh, I have an idea. I can pitch to this one. So it's so accessible. So I definitely recommend if it's someone that you know within the industry, someone like yourself, or anyone that you know that has access to send out this information to make it more accessible and to save you the time from having to search for these publications. But what would you say would be other sources where people can find information on editors, publications, or PR reps?
Yeah, so I get asked this question a lot, like, where do you find the opportunities? And honestly, that's why I created my Substack, because there's so many things that cross my path in a day from so many different inputs. And I was like, let me just put this all in one place for people. And it's been really valuable for them. So Facebook groups that I'm part of, some of them private, some of them not, some of them for bloggers, some of them for content creators, some of them for women in travel and entrepreneurs. LinkedIn and the connections that I've built over the years, every single editor I've ever written for, I've, friend requested on LinkedIn. And like I said, they might have been fired from this outlet. Now they're working from this outlet. Like they move. There's a lot of movement. Same thing with PR people. They move a lot too. So you were working with this brand before and now you're, at a completely unrelated like food brand. It's not even having anything to do with travel. I still keep up with them. So I friend request everybody. I have all those connections on LinkedIn. I have all the professional travel organizations that I've been a part of: Society of American Travel Writers, North American Travel Journalists Association, Outdoor Writers Association of America. There's, a dozen plus writer organizations, professional organizations that are membership based, that they share opportunities. They have directories. They have webinars, they have conferences, they have meet the editor sessions, different women communities in general, like Wonderful, like Girls Who Love Travel, like all these things. I'm just really connected in the world. And so whenever I see anything, I compile it and I share it together. But it's really, I think you need to be connected. I think a lot of people try to succeed in this field in isolation. And they're like, I'm just going to keep creating content and have it work. Why isn't this brand reaching out to me? Well, because they just finished meeting in person, 30 other creators that are comparable to you and that they like because they have a personal connection with. Like, unfortunately, like this is how work works. I would love to work in isolation and not have to ever deal with anyone ever, right? But that's not how life is. And every single industry has conferences, has professional organizations, every single industry, Dentists of America, Architects of America, they all have a place where they come together to network. And if you're not participating in this, if you're not part of these online communities, if you're not part of these groups, if you're not signed up for these newsletters, if you're not attending these conferences, you're not going to be the first to know of opportunities. I've attended so much and I've done so much that I feel like I'm aware of an opportunity like within an hour of it dropping. And it's not all for me, and it can be overwhelming too, because like I said, they're not all a fit. Some of them I've personally outgrown professionally, and that's where I thought the Substack was a great thing, because I'm not going to, first, I can't take on every single opportunity. Even if I applied, I'm not going to be accepted for every single opportunity. So why not just share these? Because it may not be a fit for me, but maybe it's a fit for others. And maybe it is a fit for me, but it was meant for someone else. Like, so I just share it all openly, and I just assume that what's meant for me is going to find me. And I've had, PR people where where they're like, oh, I don't have a budget for this trip necessarily. Would love it if you could share this press trip opportunity with your audience on Substack. And then could you also send me a marketing proposal so we can keep you in mind specifically when we do have budget, you know? So I feel like what's meant for you is going to come for you, and building those relationships is never a bad thing. Me helping PR people fill a trip that they're looking to fill is never a bad thing. They're going to always look at me like, oh, at the very least, Jen has access to these people. So they're going to look at me as somebody valuable. And that's never, again, a bad thing to be in this industry. So I always try to stay connected, always try to help people, always try to be aware of who is where. Like there was somebody I knew who was recently fired. It was an editor I've worked with, and I saw another great position that I thought would be ideal for him. And I sent it to him immediately before I even posted it on my Substack. Because one, I do think he would be really qualified for it. So it's win-win for everybody. But how great if I were to now know the editor at this other publication too. Like that would be nothing but a win for me. So I try to be really helpful. I try to be really plugged in, and I try to be present. And it's not easy after like a decade in this, because conferences can take a lot out of you. And I've done like 6+ in a year. And so it can be a lot. So I've become, in my old age, I've become pickier with the things that I take on.
I
But I
can
find
relate
them
to that.
all valuable. Exactly. I could hear when you were talking about it and how you assess a trip and whether it's worth it too, that it's absolutely the way I look at things, but it's all valuable, and it's all valuable experience. And it just depends on where you are at your life and in your business.
And I love that mindset that you have as well, because I know in my personal experience, I'm similar to you, that if I find an opportunity, maybe it's not a good fit for me, or maybe I have a friend that I'm like, hey, I think you should maybe check this opportunity out. I think you'd be great for it. Or if I have someone in mind, like, why wouldn't I want to help someone else instead of gatekeeping it? And I think that's one of the things that, unfortunately, some people kind of have that mindset, and they kind of want to gatekeep some information because they feel like, you know what, if Jen gets this opportunity, then it's bad for me. But we shouldn't think that way, because what's meant to be yours is going to come your way anyway. So I think having that mindset allows for all of that positive energy to come back and these great opportunities to circle back. But I love what you said about the networking part, because I know I tell my daughter that all the time. I was like, unfortunately, in life, sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know. And you never know who you're talking to, what door can open. I recently went to Advertising Week. This is my first time attending this. It happened in New York City a couple of weeks ago. And we went, Meta was hosting a networking event. And I was just chit chatting with this lady that was there. We're talking. And then towards the end of the conversation, she was like, let's follow each other. So I follow her. And then I see that she works for a very, very big brand. And I was like, oh, here I am talking to this person, and she handles the influencer marketing campaigns for this brand. And I was like, amazing. And she was like, hey, make sure to follow me, stay in touch. If I hear something, opportunity arises, I would love to work together. And throughout the conversation, that was never my intention to pitch myself to her, but just naturally talking to her. And I was like, how amazing is that? Just naturally having these conversations. And now here I am, just made a new friend, and possibly that eventually maybe can turn into some type of business relationship as well. So kind of keeping those doors open, I feel like it's definitely great, because you never know what opportunity or who you're going to meet.
I agree completely. Yes. And I find those events to be valuable. They can also be exhausting. So you have to limit yourself, because you get invited to a lot of free events, and they're fun. They have food, there's, entertainment, but it can be a lot. So I highly recommend for you, you're lucky because you're in the New York City area. And so you have so many great top notch events that are, right in your backyard that you can go to. Um, yeah, so I think they're worthwhile, and I've driven for them. Like I drove for a TikTok event, like 5 hours to get to a TikTok, event, just so I could see who's here, who can I talk to. And I think it is valuable when you're somebody who makes your business off these platforms to have an inside contact, because if something happens to your platform, like because of these creator programs that I'm part of, we've kind of veered off of writing, but the creator programs that I'm part of, they allow me to have direct access to somebody that's managing the creator. So if something happens to my account, I have somebody I can email, like a person dedicated to handling me, for YouTube Shorts creator program, for the Casa TikTok program. So that's really valuable. And I do think when you're able to participate in those events, do it. And as a writer, you will get so many invitations. So the minute you start freelance writing and you get any kind of history of placing articles in well-known media publications, you will start to get press releases. Like people will start to contact you with story ideas, because they're finding your information on these media outlets, and they're being like, oh, Rosa just wrote this amazing story. She might want to cover my client, right? And
That
that's
did
when you're
happen
gonna,
to me. That's so funny,
yeah.
because that did happen to me. And I was like, oh man, the freaking pressure.
It's how PR people do their job. They're finding journalists to pitch, hope the same way that you're finding editors to pitch, hoping that the journalists will want to include their client in the coverage. So the minute you start publishing, you will have people reaching out to you. And the way I like to take that and turn that into an opportunity, because usually they just want you to write about it, is I'll tell them, I don't write about anything I haven't experienced myself. Are you hosting media? And that's how you can turn an outreach into a potential press trip.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point because, like you said, I mean, I know for myself, we do get a lot of invites. It's nice to be so close to New York. Unfortunately, for my personal situation, because I have a full-time job, more often than not, I get FOMO because I'm like, man, I really wanted to go to this event. So whenever I can go, I do push myself, even though I am very much an introvert, but I become a social butterfly when I attend these events and I'm like a complete different other person. And then I'll come back home and just snuggle with my dog and not talk to a single soul for like 3 days. It's all
It's
about
hard to
balance.
You gotta push yourself to go, but it's worth it once you do, and you almost always get something out of it, some contact out of it. So yeah, I think it's worthwhile.
I agree. So, what would you say would be one piece of advice that you wish you've known when you started your travel writing journey?
I don't know that I would do anything differently or that I would tell myself anything differently because it's been pretty rewarding. And I don't think I would try to get a traditional book deal any quicker than I did. I self-published before I went traditionally published, and that was not a problem. I would still do it that same way. So I think I would just maybe tell myself how many different ways there are to monetize and that this could actually be a legitimate career just to encourage me to keep going. But it's still something that I'm figuring out along the way, right? Because there's always new things. Like Substack is relatively new. It's been around for about, at least mine is just a little bit over a year old. And so there's always new things that are coming up. And it's something that I'm always trying to figure out. How can I better monetize my writing? What is shifting in the media landscape right now? And where can I go to, take the same skill set and get the maximum ROI for it? So I think I would encourage myself and be like, hey, this is going to be kind of crazy. Like so much has changed in the last 20 years. Like we didn't even have smartphones in the last 20 years. And now we're walking around like with personal computers tied to us at all times, like, taking up 12 hours of our eyeballs a day. So I would just tell myself like there's going to be a lot of things coming. And I'm sure even now, 20 years from now, it's going to be completely, different as well. And it feels like we've just been on a roller coaster of like the media landscape completely shifting, like, everything, Google's algorithm, AI bringing in, like, so everything feels like it's always shifting underneath you. And so I think I would just give myself encouragement to be like, this is going to be a crazy roller coaster. Like, just when you think that you're okay, like, things are going to just go wild and all over the place. But like, that's the journey. And I don't know what else to say except like buckle up and just get ready to go through it. But I think I would encourage myself to just be like, it's actually meant to be this way. It's okay. Um, because I think before we had all the trappings of what stability looks like and what this success looks like. And it really was that one person who is on staff for this magazine, the one staff writer for National Geographic, the travel writer for New York Times that gets to go out and do these things. And we've just seen a big shift in that. This landscape is not what it was, 50 years ago, and it will not be the same thing 50 years from now. So, and it's such an interesting time to be. I can't think of any other time in writing history other than like maybe the introduction of like the printing press, right? Like where
Taking it
things
way
were
back.
yeah, like I can't think of any other time where there's been like such a big shift in how we do this, but really how we're conveying information right now. This information age has just been wildly changing every single day. And so if you're somebody that's taking part in this, if you're somebody who's trying to make money online, if you're somebody that wants to monetize your interest, the good news is that there's no better time to do it than now. There's never been a time where you've been able to have success as a freelance travel writer or a freelance writer generally online as there is right now, but it is constantly changing and you have to be on your toes and you kind of just have to be willing to adapt and keep surfing to whatever comes your way. So I would just I would just be like, it's going to get wild, but keep going. You got this.
You got it, girl. I know. I always feel like right when I'm getting the flow of something, something changes. And then I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like last year, I was like, all right, I'm going to focus on my blog. I'm going to grow my subscribers and my blog. And then the whole Google thing happened. And then like the views were just tanking. And then I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like now when I finally decided I'm getting the rope of everything, you just change things on me. But like you said, you have to be able to adapt because things are changing pretty much sometimes even on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
There's different trends, there's different things that are popular. So just being able to evolve and adapt to that and just trying it. Like I know I always tell my daughter, like, don't let the fear of failure stop you from doing something. Like I know I'd rather look back and be like, man, I really flopped or I really did bad, but at least I tried it. I hate looking back on things that I completely missed out because I was too afraid. So like going back to earlier in the episode when I tell you I was so ready to hit unsend on that email that I sent to the editor, but I was like, you know what? I'm confident. I'm gonna send it, and if I get a no, I get a no. So when I got the yes, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best day of my life!" And I'm glad that I didn't chicken out. So sometimes I think we're our own worst enemies, and we
Mhm.
get in our head, and we kind of talk ourselves out of opportunities because we get imposter syndrome. We don't think that maybe we're not good enough or the story is not good enough. So just making sure that you believe in yourself, and if you get a rejection, guess what? It's fine. There's going to be someone out there that's going to give you that yes to get you started.
Yeah, it's self-disqualifying, and it's something I keep in mind all the time. If there's something I really want, I applied for this huge grant with this huge name. I've always applied, like you said, Nat Geo. I figure, why not apply for the big things? I think a lot of people are like, no, I have to work my way there. You know what? I lose
Go big or
nothing
go
by hitting
home.
send. Yeah, hit it right now. Like send it right now. Try it right now. So I've always like the first big public speaking thing I did after quitting law was TEDx. I wasn't like, oh, I need to join Toastmasters. I was like, no, we're gonna apply for the TEDx talk. So just do it. Washington Post was one of my first big bylines. And so I think that's definitely something that I always keep in mind when I'm applying for something like that, is that the majority of people will self disqualify. So, like, at least half of the people who are looking and are interested in that application won't even apply because they think they don't meet the requirement or whatever the case may be. And then on top of that, the people who apply and actually like follow instructions, also really hard for people to do. And like then on top of that have something like, so it like the actual pool of your competition narrows down a lot more than you think as you go through the process. Like all these people are interested and they see it. Of that, only this many people apply. Of that, only this many people applied properly. Of that, only this many people have like actual good merit and ideas and like credentials to stamp. So like you think the pool of competition is so much bigger than it actually is. And just by putting yourself out there and applying, you're already setting yourself apart from everybody else. So I keep that in mind all the time. I go big all the time. Life is short. The world is crazy every single day. You never know what's going to happen next. So why not go and go after the things you really want?
Exactly. I feel like that's like a topic for all of our episodes. It's like, you know what? Just do it. Just be brave, be adventurous, do it. Why not?
And I'll also know
Stress about it later.
nobody cares as much as you do. I think we get in our own heads so much about how we're perceived by others. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to look and have people see that we fail. Nobody cares. Everybody's in their own lane. Everybody's cared about their own movie. They're the main character in their own show. And you are on the periphery. Like your failures do not matter that much to them because they're focused on their own failures. Like they're not sitting here tracking every single one of yours. Don't worry about that so much. Don't worry about how other people perceive you, what other people think of you, especially in the online space, right? Where everybody's worried about being cringe, being canceled. It's something I still have to deal with constantly because I have got so many moments where I've gone viral and I've had, a lot of pushback or articles that I've written that I've gotten nasty comments on. I learned early on never read the comments on your articles, particularly the personal essays, like because people have opinions, right? And so
Oh yeah.
just don't read them. It doesn't help you. But yeah, I think if you keep that in mind, that not everybody yes, you may get these negative comments, but for the most part, like really people are focused on their own thing. You have to scream so loud into the void of the internet just to get any bit of attention. Like don't think that people are sitting there obsessing over like your next failure. Oh my god, you did this and it was cringe. Who cares? Like don't let that stop you. You're going to have cringe moments, all of that. And people are really only going to start tuning in when it's your success. So worry about getting there and don't worry about everybody's opinion along the way.
I love that because it's very true. People will always have something to say. I mean, I personally don't subscribe to negativity. Like when people leave a negative comment or if I say something and I'll get like a DM, I just delete it. I don't
Mhm.
even waste my time. It's very, very rare that I'll actually respond to something negative because I take personal satisfaction in not letting someone see me get upset or like riled up. And I'm like, you know what? You're not worth my time or energy. Just delete and block and just keep it moving. But there are some days that I kind of
Mhm.
feel feisty and I'm like, you know what? We're going to go at it.
It's honestly the best way to do it. I've done it both ways and I've seen like the clapbacks, and sometimes that can do well for your account. And I've seen people that have grown their accounts just off of their clapbacks. I think it takes something out of you to be
Mhm.
constantly engaging and giving more of a platform to the very worst things that people say about you. And so I think that they don't know you, but once you allow it to exist, it exists now inside of you. And it's now in the doubts of your mind potentially coming up, right? And so I think the way you're doing it, it's the only way that you devote the minimum attention. So it literally goes in one ear and out the other because you haven't responded. It's now not concrete. You're just like, okay, delete. And then your mind doesn't put that into like permanent information. Whereas if you're responding to it, you're making an argument with that person, you're trying to come up with like now it comes into your permanent information and it makes that comment like stick in and be heavier. So I think your way of dealing with it is actually the smartest, healthiest way, which is just to not even engage and allow it to just be like a passing mosquito that just keeps on going.
Exactly. And on that note, we'll switch off to some little fun rapid fire questions. So, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So, would you rather write your story while you're still on the plane or wait until you've landed and had some time to reflect?
When I've landed and I write first thing in the morning on the plane, the only thing I do is veg and watch movies.
I'm with you on that one. The moment I sit on the airplane seat, I am like dozed off. I always attempt to read a book, but I like literally read like 3 lines, go to sleep, and strategically wake up when it's snack time.
Yes.
So, would you rather banish one overused word from travel writing forever or invent a brand new one that everyone is going to start using?
I think it's really hard to have words not be overused at some time. I think our language starts to shift. That's why we've seen the term for now, like First American and Indigenous people, like shift so much over time. Words are like hidden gem. Now you can't say hidden gem because we've used it so much. So I think words are always going to shift, and I don't have any problems with word existing, so I probably would just make up a new word. I think it's I don't get mad at people using overused terms. It's not their fault. Again, it's just like how language works. So I think it would be fun to make a new word.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm inventing new words. Like my grammar is really good, but my pronunciation sometimes is very, very off. I always blame it. I'm like, yeah, Spanish is my first language. So like I butcher words in English all the time. So I feel like I'm always making up new words anyway. So I'll definitely go with that one too.
Yes.
Now, would you rather always write from your most inspiring place ever or constantly discover new spots that are going to challenge you creatively?
I go to new places. I think the for me the novelty is what keeps me in the present. I'm somebody who gets in her head a lot, and so the novelty of discovery of having to be aware because everything you're processing is new, new smells, new places, new directions. Like once you get into routine, you go into autopilot, and then that's when my brain can go into all the places. So I think having to be present because I'm somewhere completely new, my senses are all being bombarded and I have to figure out how to navigate a new place gives me an energy and an immediate presence in my body that is really hard to replicate.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one too. I rather experience a new place as well. But once again, Jen, thank you so much for being on the show. So before we wrap up, what advice would you give to someone who wants to break into travel writing or journalism, but they might feel a little intimidated?
I would say that, like I mentioned in the past, you already are an expert on something. And so try not to get too crazy about, like, I have to go halfway across the world and find a language that hasn't been spoken in 50 years. Like, that's what I have to write about. No, you can write about the best, seasonal things to do in your city, the best. What is your state known for? Do you have a particular food? Do you have a business owner that's been there for 100+ years of a family owned business? Like, these are all stories that you are uniquely positioned to tell. You don't have to go far to tell them. You are already an expert on something, I promise.
I love that. And where can everyone find you, Jen?
So, if you are interested in these travel opportunities, I recommend finding my Substack, which is Jet Plane Crew from Jet on a Jet Plane. So, jetplanecrew.substack.com. You can also find a free 5-day pitching challenge that I have that takes you through the who, what, where, when, and why of the perfect travel pitch. And you can find that on my website, jetonajetplane.com/start. And that's where you will find the link for the 5-day pitching challenge.
And we'll also be sure to include that on the show notes as well, just to make it easy for everyone. Cause I know like I like when everything is just there for me. I just have to like click a button.
Yes.
And on that note, that is a wrap on today's episode of Bon Voyage Besties. So, again, huge thanks to Jen for joining us today and sharing her insight into the world of professional travel writing. We loved hearing about how writing can open doors to seeing the world in brand new eyes. So, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give us a follow and a review on Bon Voyage Besties, wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find Jen on Jen on the Jet Plane, and we'll link all of her resources on the show notes. So until next time, besties, keep your passports ready, your minds open, and your words flowing. Bon voyage, besties. Until the next time.